How is again? This is one of the projects I've been doing, these kinds of things. I finally get something I meant to do for a while. I've been meaning to get to, never throw out your old PCs. Your old PCs are full of useful stuff, including the hard drive, which you can put into a caddy and it uses an external hard drive, and motors and stuff. And very useful of all is the power supply. And if you know a bit about electronics and wiring and stuff, you can make yourself a very powerful. This small one here puts out nearly 5 amps at 12 volts, which is enough to power all the LED lighting in your house. And if you were to buy this here, like off the shelf, it costs you like €50. You can pull these out of your PC, and with there's some basic wiring you have to do inside. There's an automatic switch wire and other things like that. But that's the kind of thing that this lockdown has been. I'm also making a much bigger one that's 14 amps for a bench test, multiple multiple voltage power supply. That's the kind of thing you can do, and that's the kind of thing I've been doing. And when you're doing these things, when you're wiring and cutting or painting or anything like that, whatever you're doing in your house, gardening, whatever, the mind tends to wander. And we're living in times that are unprecedented, okay? Now, not only do we have this virus thing, but I cannot stop getting this thing about the asteroids and the Comet Atlas out of my head. I just can't. Especially when I compare that to why the hell did Donald Trump, the President of the United States, create a branch of the Air Force concerned with space warfare? Yeah, I know you can have missiles in space, like you had Reagan's Star Wars thing, that you can do things, you can intercept things from foreign nations who are trying to jam your satellites or shoot them out of the sky or all this other kind of thing. But that would have been normally under the domain of the US Navy, who have a lot of satellites in space, and also the US Army. But this is a very specific space warfare thing. Also, coupled with that, I can't stop looking at the skies. Now that we have clear skies, it's just strange. The Earth's magnetosphere being battered, strange gamma rays from the sun, these asteroids and these comets coming in. At the same time, we have a space warfare thing. And some remarkable footage came out of Somerset in England today of this thing, it's just bizarre. Could have been a meteorite falling straight down, but meteorites don't come directly straight down. I've never seen one. Now, because of all the aircraft trails, and it's not around and you can see the sky better, you will see meteor trails in daytime. And I have, in 2000, I think it was 10 or 9, when they had the shutdown on the Icelandic volcano, I even took photographs of daytime meteor trails around here. Twice I got them. And because there's no aircraft trails and beautiful blue skies, and you have an unprecedented view, and especially at night. Now, I don't believe in the aliens thing. Well, put it this way. I don't believe in, or haven't seen any proof of, the standard model of how aliens are supposed to interact with humanity. So, the standard model being they live on other planets, in other solar systems, other galaxies, and they have spaceships that allow them to travel here. They look at us and they don't interact because of some nonsense that we're not ready yet, or we're dangerous, or they'll share the technology when we have world peace. And I've always been known that was an intelligence services thing, the whole one world thing. But at the same time too, I cannot discount that folklore from every part of the world talks about non-human beings whether they be the jinn, the elves, the goblins, anything, the Wetiko, anything. And in all these stories, the Nagas, in all these stories, these groups have a hostility to humanity. People nowadays think that fairies are all Tinkerbell from Disney movies. People of Celtic background lived in absolute terror of the fairies. And so did, it's like the jinn in the Islamic world. They're afraid of the jinn. And it's the Wetiko, it's things like skinwalkers and everything, Now, suppose this planet has dimension upon dimension, layer upon layer upon layer on top of it. And they're in one dimension and we're in another. And this hostility towards us, for whatever reason, we assume that just because they're associated with archaic ideas, ancient agrarian or rural cults or things like that, that their technology has not improved alongside our technology in a different way. So therefore, as we develop space travel, they probably develop their space travel. As we develop electronics, they developed electronics. And as these things happen, and as things like hadron colliders and quantum computers and all this other stuff comes along, and you have things like they're able to now move particles across space and time by virtue of understanding the double split and the quantum entangled experiment, have these beings. We call them demons, we call them fairies, we call them jinns, we call them goblins, we call them pixies, we call them watikos, we call them whatever you want. Are they doing the same too? And is this progression of technology bringing them closer to us and us closer to them? Now, you've heard me talk about the digital jinn and Coronzon 333 and how even from the early days of development of radio, there was a manic desire to connect or contact spirits. And much of the radio technology of the early 1900s was driven by this desire to contact spirits out of the craze of the spiritualist movement. And we've had things like ghost boxes and all kinds of other things. I tend to agree with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. They're all jinn. All of it. UFOs, ghosts, paranormal events, shadow people, skinwalkers, the lot. We just have regional names for them. They're most commonly known as the jinn, beings of smokeless fire, so plasma in this reality. They could be fully formed beings in their own reality. So, we do know from demonology and occult that you tell the future or you find lost things by trapping a demon like Oberon, because he's highly suspected to be a jinn because the cunning folk portrayed him in Arabic dress, just like said, as if, of the Necronomicon. So if they can transcend space and time, either leaving this planet in the same way humans can do astral traveling. That brings me another. I've been having very strange dreams lately of being able to fly, but not pleasant dreams of being able to fly. I'm like bouncing around like a spring-heeled jack or something around cities and in buildings, and it always seems to happen in darkness. And I'm being hunted. And I'm being hunted. What I'm being hunted by is a small Chinese person, like a midget, and or Oriental, but definitely looks Chinese. And with this clarity, with this deep thinking as we're living in this world at the moment under the COVID-19 lockdown, if you wanted to take your grievance with humanity, if you're a jinn, or whatever you want to regionalize, like call them in terms of regional understanding, and you could move in space time that we can't, by virtue of the fact that they're not limited by the body we have. But that's also what makes them jealous of us, because they want to possess us, because they can have, that'll allow them to have sex, enjoy alcohol, uh, enjoy emotions, these kinds of things. They greatly envy us for us. This is both in the fairy tradition and in the Jinn tradition, ultimately the same thing. And if, you can call them archons, whatever you want, grey aliens, etc. It doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. And what if they got into space and took control of asteroids and comets and turned them into organic missiles? Just a thought. We know that they're extremely jealous of human. This is from, we know from the Celtic tradition that people have gone to fairyland, say it's like this world, next to this world. And they all said the same thing. It's really in a bad way. They have animals and livestock on their farms, but they're all sickly and unproductive. They grow crops in their fields and they're a mess. They have a great envy of the fact that we can farm so well. We have much more physical sensations than they do. And this is where these resentments comes from. Are we at war? Are we in lockdown because we're at war? Is this why planes are not in the sky? Just say for argument's sake, we did have a real terror about disease being spreading. Well, you wouldn't have planes landing and taking off from Dublin Airport like they are constantly. Why are 20,000, 50,000 American troops suddenly rushed into Europe right now? What is going on? And this sense of spiritual identity, why do they want the skies empty? What are they looking for? Why did they launch an enormous rocket with a communication satellite right in the middle of this pandemic? Why was NASA and the US military literally dragged out and put out there to do this? Why is the CIA have a video which they took down, and they almost put it out there for people who are clued in to know this, and then took it down again, so it would become into the domain of conspiracy theory? But why did the CIA have a town hall meeting on YouTube, a live video, saying that their senior staff must immediately report to all high-level underground bases? Why do you go into an underground base because of a form of flu? If it was just a form of flu, Trump would have said, screw this, and just went on life as normal, and put out orders for people who are vulnerable to be socially isolated. So people with cystic fibrosis, asthmatics like me, people with cancer, AIDS, HIV, and so on, the geriatrics would be put into social isolation and life would continue on. But there was a press conference that I just cannot get out of my head. It was the main first COVID-19 press conference, and he wasn't the same Trump. He looked sad, and the way his staff greeted him, you could see genuine love and affection there. But he looked sad. He looked like someone who, that all those years of, he looked like something like he'd lost a child or he'd lost his mother or something. He had that look on it about him. What's going on? Now, I hope I'm completely crackpot with all this, and it's just me, my mind running away at myself, writing a science fiction novel in my head that I'm somehow transporting or transferring or compensating into real life. But ever since Uma, and I just saw a bumblebee there. That's the first bumblebee this year. Uh, Ever since Uma, I've been thinking a lot about the alien thing, and then my own study of folklore and things like this, attaching it into that with magic and stuff. Now, we had a chaos magic ritual basically running mostly on Facebook called No Corona Had No Shine by April 9. It was just reported in the Irish Times today that the Irish government said that they'd won the battle on April 9th because the exponential increase suddenly stopped. And the language they used, let it be known. That's the word they used. Let it be known that coronavirus went into decline on April 9. That's what they actually said in the article in the paper. And this is, we had the chaos magic got in there. Even if we were only guessing that date through that insight I got, and his use of language was the result of the chaos magic stuff, I don't know, but it happened. It's undeniable. So I take my insights and my messages from beyond very seriously. And while I was working, converting this power supply today, it just popped into my head. Are we at war? And it's a war we're not being told about because it's happening in a realm that if most people heard about it, they would think their leaders were all insane, or they would go absolutely batshit crazy, and there would be riots and everything. Are they getting us ready for something? The grounding of aircraft seems particularly strange. It just seems, I don't know. This thing could happen, or it could not happen, or I'm completely off base here. But it could also happen and take place, and we not know about it. So therefore, it would be like the asteroid that nearly got us in 2008. They didn't tell anybody. There was a complete lockdown until it passed, because we would have been toast if it hit us. And even that, there was a complete media lockdown. It's just the corona thing. Yeah, we know all about the whole thing of police state and crashing the economy and all this. It's still not enough. There's something going out there. There is one other possibility, and this is in the realm of even more fantastical. What if the coronavirus was deliberately designed by the same forces to weaken us so we couldn't fight back? Like biological warfare, or just like a chemical warfare. Think of how they had gas attack. They would have gas attacks on troops in the trenches, and then that would make them easy to attack, or they would scarper out the trenches, and then that would make the trenches easier to capture. Are we dealing with something like that? Are we dealing with a war in the future that's been brought to the past? We've often heard people say things like, aliens are probably humans. I remember from a little kid wondering this, and I was always speculated by lots of people. Aliens are humans from the future having a look back at the past, like a real life living history lesson. What if Terminator movies, the robot in Terminator T1 or T2, something is coming from the future. Say there was a war between the US and China in the future, coming back to make a preemptive attack in the past. And, a year ago, 2 years ago, this would have been considered completely off the scale. But now we know time travel is possible. Now it's accepted. They can move nanoparticles into true space and time. They know that most of the universe is missing. We've got 94 or 96% dark matter energy. Are we at war? Are we at war? Is this it? Is this the alien invasion? And is the alien the interdimensionals, the jinns, the demons, whatever you want to call them, that live around us in parallel universes. Because it seems to me that even with this being just a pandemic, what we're being put through, what we're being said, what's going on, and all the circumstantial things around it, the Atlas comet being called C19, the same as the virus, an experiment going on at CERN called Atlas, the military space force, the US troops arriving in Europe in huge numbers for no reason. We're not told. An exercise. I mean, they don't have to come here for an exercise. Are we, like we're already living in, I've been saying this from the beginning about the COVID-19 thing. It's like living in a Doctor Who episode or a classic British sci-fi films like Quatermass. They've come to life. But is that far more literal? I suggest people watch Quatermass 3, the 1979 version with John Mills, to get an insight into what I'm trying to discuss here. I hope I'm wrong. I hope, we've been here for a long time, and these interdimensionals, these entities have always attacked us, either through shadow people and whatever you want to talk about it. But lots of people are having spiritual events right now. The spirit world is very close. Is it an attempted invasion? And is Corona-19 a beachhead? You tell me what you think. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying we're already living in a real life Doctor Who episode. Are we now living in a Quatermass episode? Thank you.